first time I'm invited over, and the question I posed to Dave was, "Oh, what do you do for a living?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm a pastor, unfiltered, teenage Muslim. The only thing I've been told a pastor does is exactly what I repeated to him. I'm like, oh, what's it like to send people to hell for a living?
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of No Longer Nomads. I'm your host, Josh Doyle. I am fired up about today's episode. I've got a good friend with me. His name is Osman, and he's from Somalia, and he lives here in the States. He's got an incredible story. God's hand was on him since he was a little guy, and really it's incredible to hear the journey that he's gone on to where he is today. So excited for you to be here, and thank you for tuning in. Osman, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, well, tell the audience a little bit about you and who you are.
Yeah, so my name is Osman. I'm 6'2". Love Chipotle. Just kidding. No,
I love Chipotle too.
Oh, who doesn't? So I would categorize myself as, I'm technically a first generation refugee to America, but culturally speaking, I would say I'm more of a third generation. Like, American culture is what I grew up in.
Okay.
Even though I'm was the bridge for my parents between Somali culture to American culture. A lot of Somalis that are some first wave could definitely relate there. Third generation in America could definitely relate to my upbringing. Came here when I was 6. Left when I was 5. It took a year for us to get here from Somalia.
Okay.
It's really, really sad how my home country fell apart, and it's still recovering. Like 30 years later, still isn't stable or thriving as it could be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Went to high school here in the States in Minnesota, went to university. Afterwards, found the Lord in between that. And then, since graduating, I've been in full-time ministry, since 2012.
Awesome. So tell us about your life in Somalia and ultimately what led you and your family to leave.
Yeah. So, I've had a big project since 2020 that I've been working on, and that was writing my testimony out as a book to encourage others seeking Muslims, hopefully seeking Somalis. And part of that was in order to know where I am now, I wanted to learn where I came from and why my people left the country. And it was so sad. One of my editors, I'll give her a shout out, Anne, when I started writing it, I was so enthralled of like the history of Somalia. That's all I was writing about. And she's like, "I don't think you're writing your testimony. I think you're writing a book report on like why Somalia fell apart." And so she's like, "I think you should start over." But it's really sad. The government basically imploded on itself. Definitely affected by being controlled by the Italians, the French, and the British, and then they united themselves with Russia. Russia still does cosmonaut trainings in Somalia, which is kind of crazy to think. And so with the partnership with Russia, weapons definitely started getting fed into Somalia. So if you notice a lot of pictures of some, like, the warlords that took over Somalia when the government kind of imploded on itself, they are brandishing AK-47s. Sadly, PR nightmare for Toyota, because all of them mostly drive Toyotas. So because of that causes huge humanitarian crisis where Bill Clinton levied the United Nations to help. It was, I think, called Operation Restore Hope. And that's where the movie Black Hawk Down takes place, where American Rangers are sent in to help stabilize the country, but they weren't allowed to engage unless they were fired upon. So in the movie, you'll see like food being dropped down to people, but then immediately warlords would come, shoot bullets at people to get them to flee away, and then they would use food as a means of recruitment. Like, you either starve or join our cause, which is really sad. And then so that caused a lot of people to consider where do we go. So you got couple choices. You go you go through Somalia, through Somaliland, up north into Ethiopia, which a lot of Somalis did,
Okay.
and then you have your next choice is to go across to Saudi Arabia and Yemen and Oman, which a bunch of Somalis have done that. We took the route of going down the coast, not through the country, because that was really dangerous. To head to Kenya was our goal. Our family packed up into a small boat, which wasn't really designed for sea travel or ocean travel. So it took a 3-day journey. Second day, boat tipped over. Sadly, my twin brother drowned, and then we had to leave him there. And then we got to Nairobi, Kenya.
How old were you?
I
How
was
old were you
5.
so you were 5 years old when you left. It was just not safe for your family to be there, so you guys fled.
Yep.
And how many brothers, sisters do you have?
So at this point, I had two older sisters. My oldest sister, Milun, then Fidosa, then me, and technically Mohammed, then me. So I was 4. And then my younger sister, Fatima, and then Shamark was born. And then I have 3 more siblings, but they were born in the U.S. So what was that 6 of us kids? But only 5 made it.
Oh, that's terrible, man.
Yeah. Got to Nairobi, stayed at the refugee camp. The conditions there were horrible. At no fault to Kenya or the UN. By no means.
Yeah.
It's the influx that they were having was so bad. They were doing as best as they could, but my family, particularly my father, wasn't content. And so we then stayed with a family friend in Cairo, Egypt for 3 months. That kind of pushed like Somali culture, hospitality. You don't really want to stay longer than you need to, even though our hosts were gracious and were more than willing to let us to stay as long as we, until our refugee status visas were approved so we could come to the U.S. It took a year for that. We started in Nairobi and then continued it. Then we went, so 3 months at the camp, 3 months in Egypt, and then finally 6 months in Paris with my aunt. She's the white sheep in the family who moved to France. So we stayed with her until we were approved to come to the States. And I thank the Lord because I don't get me wrong, I love France. I love the French people. I'm very glad I don't have a French accent.
That's funny. So I remember part of your story, and I'm very familiar with it for, the stuff we've done on I Found the Truth. And when you got to Kenya, you were obviously heartbroken because from what I remember, everyone kind of grabbed someone when the boat went over, and no one grabbed your twin brother. And you, of course, like anyone, would be totally distraught. And you can tell them kind of what happened with the Kenyan border agent trying to.
Yeah. That. Oh man, I have a fun scar. Not fun, in the sense of, oh man, that's a great memory. It's more like a tragic. I don't think it's going to show up on camera, but when I got to so I lost my twin brother, and at that point, it's hard to remember, but I've knowing kids with twins, like that connection being broken, I was so distraught. I cried for days. But when we got to the Kenyan Border Patrol, God bless this man, I'm pretty confident he was having a bad day. He decided the best way to get a 5-year-old to stop crying is to take a cigarette and burn it on his arm. It didn't work.
Newsflash, it
I don't
didn't
have
work.
Kids. I'm on the side of like spank your kids.
Yeah.
My wife is on the opposite.
Well, that's good. You got to pull each other, both ways. You balance each other out.
Taking a cigarette and burning on a kid's arm works.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I've got a fun scar. I did bite him, and so
really,
part of me wonders. Like, I wish one day I could go to Kenya and meet a guy that says, yeah, I became a Christian, and my biggest regret was there was this young child crying as they were entering into the refugee camp, and I just lost it. And I had a cigarette, and I don't know what came over me, but I burned that child, and I feel so bad.
You're like, dude, that was me.
I was like, that was me. I have a scar. I don't know if you remember. I
I'll
look
show you.
different.
I'll show you. Man, that's crazy.
That would be a
So
redemptive story.
do you remember much of Somalia?
No, I had night terrors as
Okay.
a kid when I came to the States. So much so that I'm very fortunate because I know in Somali culture, there's the mysticism side of like not trusting doctors in a way, where my parents took me to a therapist, and um, I'm very fortunate. I don't remember a lot of what I saw because as a kid, in the movie Black Hawk Down, when the helicopter goes down and the soldier's being dragged through the city, I saw that as a kid, a body
Golly.
being dragged behind a truck. Um, uh, the day that we left, my grandfather, my dad's dad, ran out the front door, and the next thing you know, you hear fireworks as we're leaving, and Grandpa's not coming, and then seeing my twin brother literally drown, I had night terrors, and I was very fortunate. My parents took me to a child psychologist to help process,
Yeah. What you've
and because
seen.
yeah, and I had night terrors for a long time, so I went to like a sleep therapist to help with that. And I'm very fortunate to this day. I really don't have dreams. I'm very fortunate travel wise for mission work overseas. Whether I get 4 hours of sleep or 10 hours of sleep, to me it feels like I just close my eyes and the next thing I know I'm waking up. So I'm very
That's
fortunate.
nice.
Very
That's
fortunate.
very nice.
Yes. My wife is not like that.
Not the same.
No,
Yeah, that's a gift, man.
she needs her 9 hours.
Yeah, exactly. I'm that way too. Um, so okay, so you're in Paris, and then you eventually come to the States.
Yeah.
And where did you land, and what was your thought of American people?
I now work with helping with refugee and immigrant ministries. So in the way that the United States works, when there's a humanitarian need, there are set lists of states or cities that they go down, so that one city isn't always being bombarded with need of help,
Okay.
because they couldn't handle it. So for Somalis, there were five major cities. And the populations today reflect that. So number one, Minneapolis, Minnesota; Seattle, Washington; Portland, Oregon; Columbus, Ohio; and Atlanta, Georgia. And we got sent to Atlanta, Georgia. So that's where we entered. What were my impressions of Americans? Well, it was more the shock of coming to America. It was so big. Like, Somalia is not small. Mogadishu, where I grew up, is the capital. Is not that big, but there are parts that aren't paved.
Yeah.
Coming to America was like a huge culture shock, in an exciting way for a little kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the hardest part was the language barrier for sure. That was big, because there was that added pressure of we as kids learn faster than our parents, so we became the translators. So there's
Oh
a
yeah, yeah.
real emphasis on learning the language so that I could translate for my parents, and things that they might need help with. And so,
Gotcha. Okay, so you're here, and let's fast forward a bit to when you start to consider maybe other religions or your first exposure to Christianity. And yeah, I'd love to hear that as well. If kind of what your initial impressions were.
yeah. Okay, so let's move along, and I'll speed run, as the kids say, video game terminology. So we go from Atlanta to Nashville, Nashville to Minneapolis, Minneapolis to Mankato, which is like my hometown. It's a small city, because Minneapolis was just too big, and I think this is, well, at least for Somalis, this is common knowledge. African American culture and Black culture aren't the same in a lot of ways, and so there's the tension between Somali culture and African culture in Minneapolis was a little rough. So my
Okay,
parents moved us down to Mankato. The job opening
gotcha.
was available for my dad, so we gladly moved. And that move, um, I would say, is God's divine um, intention to move people places. So I would argue I could see God's handprint on all of our moves to where I ended landing, where the gospel was shared to me and the Bible was shared with me. And
Wow.
so, as difficult as that journey was, I see the beauty of it afterwards, if that makes sense. So, yeah, when we moved to Mankato, I met my best friend, who's a pastor's son.
Okay.
And that led to, we were in the same sports together, cross country, swimming, and track. And as that relationship furthered, he had a challenge sophomore year to bring a friend to youth group.
Okay.
Well, he's the pastor's kid. All of his friends are in youth group, but one, and he's a Muslim. And so Adam took the challenge and invited me, and I immediately shut him down, which is so bad.
Tell everyone what you said. I love what you said, man.
What I
There's such
said
a
is
good
that-
application. It was basically like, you know, and you can say it in your own words, but I think he was like, he introduced himself as a pastor or youth pastor or
Oh,
whatever.
his dad.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I had dinner with Dave and their family. First time I'm invited over, and the question I posed to Dave was, what do you do for a living? And he's like, oh, I'm a pastor. Unfiltered, teenage Muslim. The only thing I've been told a pastor does is exactly what I repeated to him. I'm like, oh, what's it like to send people to hell for a living? Unkind, rude, that is
I
not
love that.
hospitable. And so his kind of response was, well, I would love to have tell you more about that, what I do. But could you pass the peace? Like, he just,
I mean, such a
politely-
great response
he
to,
politely disarmed me and
Yeah.
then wanted to continue. And it was foreshadowing, like 2 years later, I'd be sitting in his office wanting to talk about Christianity. And I still don't know what a pastor does. He never answered that question. I'm just kidding.
that's awesome.
Yeah, but what started my journey was I was privileged enough to go to Hajj, sponsored by my mosque and partially funded by Saudi Arabia, because
Oh, wow.
I memorized the Quran. Me and 3 other students got to go for free, and then when we came back, we were really encouraged to now spread Islam as much as we could. And so I figured, well, I've been getting invited to this thing called youth group. Here's an audience of kids my age. I'm going there to destroy it. Like, that was my intent.
That's your
Not
mission.
knowing that it would destroy me in a good way.
Yeah.
So I went to, so our youth group had themes for activities. So either they were doing one theme or the other. And the themes were Explode, which is them going to the community doing active service, like rake the town, which is helping rake old people's lawns. And then Implode is when they go and do a Bible study. Like, they implode in themselves. And so I'm like, well, I'll only go to the Explode events because I don't want to go into a church. And so I went to rake the town. I thought I got tricked into Meet You at the Pole, which was a prayer event.
Oh, yeah.
But God used that so well to help me hear people pray a personal prayer directly to Him. In Islam, for the folks that don't know, they're scripted prayers. Like, you go and you say these set of prayers. Most of the time they're repetitive. If you have a certain need or a prayer request, you pray a certain scripture. It's not a personal, it's a master-servant relationship. It's not a father-child relationship. And so to hear kids my age having a personal conversation with God as a dad figure, it was really, really weird, but really softening my heart, because outside of praying for food, I've never heard people pray directly to God. And for deep needs, a lot of things in Muslim culture would be considered like really shameful to say out loud. Like, you're praying for your dad's cancer, or you're praying for like that you had anger in your heart towards another classmate that's bothering you. Like, those are things you say privately, not in a public setting. And so that really softened my heart. And that was a big draw. So in Islam, that what I loved about youth group was the building up and using fun activities as a biblical model and lesson. And what my exposure in Islam was Saturdays from 11 to 4. You learned Arabic because you cannot communicate with Allah in your mother tongue, like at all, which makes no sense because their argument is that he created you, he created languages, but prefers Arabic, and so we had to learn Arabic. You couldn't have a personal relationship. Where in Christianity, the contrast set was, I could speak to him in any language God in any language I want, and I can have a direct personal relationship. And so I kept going to Expo nights, and then finally, like 3 months of going to these activities outside the church, because there's 2 a month. Finally, the youth pastor goes, "Hey, we're studying Abraham taking Isaac to be burnt offering. Would you like to come?" Well, first, he didn't say Isaac. I added that now. He just said take his son. So I'm like, Abraham was a big pillar when I was growing up as a Muslim. He's a big pillar for Islam. And so I'm like, yeah, I would love to. I'm curious, what did Christians teach about his story? So started reading it. And as soon as it said Isaac to be burnt offering, I'm like, no, it's actually Ishmael. Could you get it right?
Yeah, you're wrong.
He's like, yeah, you're wrong. I'm like, well, he's like, well, here's a Bible. If you have any questions, he immediately deferred to his boss, asked Dave, because he knew I had a deeper relationship with Dave. And so I took the Bible, started reading it. I did something that I know is forgivable. I started ripping pages out with inaccuracies of the historical narrative of the Bible, because it doesn't go fully against the Islamic viewpoint, but the Islamic telling of it is limited. So, for instance, Jonah going into the belly of the beast or the whale, it says he goes in there, but it doesn't say how long in Islam. But in Christianity, or in the Torah, it says he was in there for 3 days and 3 nights. And Jesus references that as Jonah spent 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the beast, so will the Son of Man spend 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. Like, that is Jesus connecting to the Old Testament. Yeah. That doesn't exist in the Quran. But in the Quran, it says that when Jonah went into the beast, he went into the grave, is the Arabic translation. So it's so close to the full narrative story. But when you're reading it as a Muslim for the first time, you're like, this is added details. This is not accurate. Like, why are these details important? Why is it important that he was in there for 3 days and 3 nights? Because Jesus connects to it. So breaking that connection is more important than keeping the historical accuracy, which was really sad. And so as I started reading the Bible more and more, especially when I started reading the New Testament, I understood why I ripped the pages out from the Old Testament, because Jesus connects to most of them, which is really, really sad.
Wow.
But, really beautiful for now, but it was really sad. And then I got to Saul, loved him. Loved trying to stomp out the heresy of Christianity that was starting. And then I met Paul on the Damascus Road, and it was like, oh no, what? And the fact that this man in Ephesus gets beaten almost to the point of death, and then goes back and continues to try to reach these people, where Muhammad, rejected from Mecca, goes to Medina, grows in influence, becomes the first prophet in their chronological order to become not only a prophet but a general and a political leader. No prophet ever did that before. Yeah. And so raises an army, goes back to Mecca. According to Islamic narrative, no blood was shed, but pretty confident. Taking over the largest city requires some conflict. Yeah, right. Conflict always equals blood. Yeah, exactly. At least he had the foresight to build an army. Paul, almost near death, continues to keep preaching to these people, and the things that he can do were mind-blowing. The biggest one that stuck out to me was when Paul was teaching and they were on a second level. Young man fell asleep, fell and died. Paul brought him back to life and continued to preach into the night, and that's like, how does he have that authority? Yeah. And then there was when those disciples are trying, not disciples, they were individuals that were trying to push demons out of people. And they're like, Jesus we know, Paul we've heard of, but we don't know you. It's like he had that authority, or that effect and that power that even demonic beings knew who he
Knew
was,
him. Yeah. Yeah.
which is crazy. And then I read Revelation as a teenager. As a teenager, never questioned like death, never questioned my mortality, or thought of like, oh, one day I'm gonna die. What
Right.
happens next? And
Right.
so reading that really spoke to me, especially Revelation 1, 17 and 18, because it connects to Isaiah 44:6. So in Islam, a lot of Muslims argue Jesus never directly claimed to be God. Like, show me in the Bible where he actually says that. And then everyone jumps to, and I would agree, is the I am statement. When the priest rips his clothes off, which is
Yep.
indicating that you just called yourself God. But for me, to Muslims, I would argue, because the Quran teaches that Allah is the first and the last, and apart from him there is no other. Isaiah 44 says, God says, I am Israel's Redeemer, I am the first and I am the last. Revelation 1, 17 and 18, if you look at it, it's red letters of what Jesus says, and Jesus says, I am the first and I am the last, and I hold the keys of death and Hades. It also he also states his resurrection. Now I'm alive, and so that is Jesus not only stating that he is the first and the last, a direct quote of what God Yahweh says in Isaiah 44:6, but also a quote of Allah in the Quran.
Yeah.
So there's a problem. How can Allah say he's the first and last? How can Yahweh say it, and how can Jesus say it? And Christians argue Yahweh and Jesus are one in the Trinity. And then the Quran teaches Jesus never lied. So if Jesus doesn't lie and he's directly in the Bible stating he is God, there's a problem. So one of the three is wrong. My conclusion is the Quran is wrong, that Jesus is God.
So you came to this, you're weighing out all the different things, and that's got to be pretty heavy too, to be working through that at, you said 18?
Yeah,
about 18?
What was it? I was a sophomore, junior, and senior, so 18,
Okay.
17, 16.
Yeah. But for someone like you who's had tons of background, and I mean, to be able to be sent from Saudi Arabia to and they pay for your, everything to get over to do the Hajj. I mean, you've been doing a lot of studying. So I'd say compared to most 17 and 18-year-olds, you probably had a pretty good grasp on these things. So anyways, I'm just trying to, think from your perspective here. So you see this, wow, what's this laid in front of me? You then come to the conclusion that Jesus is the way. And what does that look like for you? Obviously, the context of leaving Islam into Christianity, what does that do for you, for your family? Does that put you in danger? What does that look like for you?
So, as I share with individuals that have a desire to minister to Muslims, I personally teach that there are three things Muslims struggle with, and that is, one, the divinity of Christ. How can he be both man and God? Two, the substitution. How can he take my sins when I'm responsible for the day of judgment for my own actions? And how can his righteousness be accounted on my behalf? And then lastly, so they could accept that Jesus is both man and divine by his nature and his miracles. They can, and if that's true, then yes, of course, he could forgive sins and take on people's sins. But then the last part is the cost. And that is where a lot of Muslims that are seeking to know who Jesus is will be like, I don't want to pay that cost. It's too great. And they'll turn away or turn back to Islam. And so for me and my costs, that was my family disowning me. I was very fortunate that I'm in America. If I was in Somalia, as Voice of the Martyr shares, the statistics, I think we're now number 2 for persecuting Christians in their own group.
Is North Korea one?
Yeah, it's been number 1 for a long while.
Yeah.
I recently was informed that we moved down from number 2 to number 3. I don't know who surpassed us, but
I'd be
I also
interested.
don't like that we're on the we're top 3 in that list at
That's
all,
crazy, man.
which is sad. But
Yeah, very
we were
sad.
there for a long time. I would be dead if I was in Somalia for becoming a Christian. I'm very fortunate that I'm here in the United States, and that meant I got disowned when I was. So I was part of Campus Crusade in college, and then I went on a summer project in San Diego. And when I told my parents I'm going on a Christian mission trip for the summer, that's when the Imam goes, he's no longer like just curious and seeking to learn about Christianity. They didn't think my faith was serious until I told them I'm going on a mission trip. They had not known about, like, they found out about baptism, and that kind of put me in this weird limbo for 9 months when my parents didn't know what to do or how to respond, because they didn't want to respond negatively to push me further away. They wanted it to be like, oh, this is just a phase. He'll come out of
Yeah.
it. But when I told them I'm now going to apostatize against Islam, that's when ties were cut. 2008.
What was that like, being disowned by your family?
I'm very fortunate. Like I said, yet again, God's divine hand in it was that I was in a place and time where I was surrounded by 100 college students who are all seeking to serve God. I wasn't alone, and so that helped. As I mourned that, because I not only my parents called, but my whole extended family around the world called and said I was dead to them, and so that was really, really, really hard. But the beauty of it is, where like Christianity is not an individualistic faith. We're part of a family. And so the way
Yeah.
I describe it is, I went from blood on the inside to blood on the outside. Like, I have blood family. And so that's the beauty of for you and me. Like, we have a brother in Korea or Japan,
Right.
profess Christ in as their Lord and Savior. We call them brothers and sisters in Christ. Islam doesn't do that. And in a lot of ways, it's, for us, it's, if you were to put a flagpole of the flags that are important, like that we represent and are important to us, we would put Christianity at the top. Then we would be like American.
Yeah.
Then Ohio or Minnesota, like that's, or teams we support. But in Islam, it's not the Islamic flag that goes first. It's actually Somali flag would go first. I'm first and foremost Somali, and then I'm Muslim, like as a group of a care. So. And that's reflective of when there are humanitarian aids and needs in Islamic countries. They don't go to their kinsmen. They go to foreign countries. Like, they're going to Western countries for help. Because they view each other, yes, as fellow Muslims, but don't view each other like family. That's why there's like a lot of tensions between Middle East countries. So that was the beauty of Christianity, is I was walking into a bigger family than what I was losing.
Yeah. So tell us about your baptism story. What made you decide to, hey, I want to fully commit. It's worth the risk. And then what did that baptism story look like?
So for me, okay, so Dave, the pastor that I met with for one-on-one, my best friend's dad,
and how long were you meeting? Sorry to jump
3
in. How long?
years.
3 years. Okay, so 3 years it took that journey one-on-one. Wow.
Yeah. So Dave was a big historian of world wars, and one of the stories that he was telling me was it was a Japanese war camp where there was a pretty evil captain, where one day a shovel had gone missing during the count, and the sergeant told the captain. And the next day, the captain in the morning warned all of the prisoners, if someone does not take responsibility for it and fess up that they took it, he's going to kill people one by one. So at the end of the day, shovel wasn't found. He put a gun towards the first guy in line and said, confess you did it? And if you don't, I'm pulling the trigger. Even if you did confess, he did pull the trigger. But either way, one gentleman steps forward and says, I took it. Captain walks over, shoots him, and dismisses everybody. And then the next morning, someone overheard the sergeant talking to a fellow officer, and they were astounded because they found the shovel. So the gentleman who took the bullet for everyone else was innocent. And so that really resonated with me because Dave used it in a sermon of that story of like Christ is that innocent that died on our behalf.
Yeah.
But what was really or even more heartbreaking is he was innocent, but we are not. And he still died. And that really resonated with me. And so I ran cross country and track. So I was on a 10-mile run when I was thinking about that, because you have nothing else to do thinking about it. And this is before the era of listening to music while you're ran.
So I was a runner too and loved long distance, and man, those long miles were rough. No, I don't even think. Maybe Walkman from time to time. Remember those things would skip like crazy? Had like the anti-skip, and it was like, oh, it skip. I think it was worse, and it even said like, it does not skip. It was worse than the original. So
today's runners have it so easy.
Oh, they do. Wireless AirPods, you know.
The shoes that are designed and cushioned so that you're not getting as big of an impact.
Yep. The socks that have like little things for on your toes so you don't get blisters. And
yep. Still lose toes though. I hear that's still a common theme if you're a long distance runner. You do lose toenails.
So you're running
toenails.
Yeah. So you're running 10 miles, and so you're starting to think some of this stuff through.
Yeah, and the conversation about baptism started happening because as you read Jesus's ministry, baptism is a constant theme of people coming to know Christ and then getting baptized. And so for me, I secretly started going to church on Sundays because we have sporting events on Saturdays, stay at Adam's house, go to church on Sunday mornings. So I was in the mosque, participating and leading the call of prayer on Friday night, then going to a track meet.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And then going to church.
So you're involved in the mosque. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
I was living in both worlds. Wow. I was having both sides of it and not having any any consequences of it until I got to baptism. And then when the time came when I decided I wanted to dedicate my life to Christ, and jump full feet in, I did not want to get baptized after service at the church because I was afraid no one would care or be there. Because normally the way that baptism worked in my home church was there's a baptismal behind the pulpit, behind the curtain, and so then when it would be announced during the service that there'll be a baptism after church, after the service. If anyone would like to stay and be a witness at, they're welcome to. And so I'm thinking no one's going to care.
And I want to
do it in secret.
Mm-hmm. Right. You want to do it in secret, and you just got disowned, or you wouldn't think obviously your family would be there, right?
Yeah, but they hadn't found out yet.
But obviously they wouldn't be there. Yeah. Okay. Nope. So you're thinking no one would come.
So then I got baptized at Madison Lake, which is just outside of Mankato, where my hometown is. And I did not know this, but Dave had been sending out a prayer request and emails to the congregation to pray for him while meeting with me. And so they've been invested for like 3 years of praying for me. And I'm about to rob them of the moment that they've been praying because I wanted to do it in secret away. So what I didn't know is everyone came from church. So what I thought was going to be like a lonely moment where I'm by myself with Dave and his family ended up being the whole church being there and celebrating it. So,
wow. So amazing.
So
you
really
gained,
awesome.
like you said, you gained an entire family. I love that picture, man. Mm-hmm. And just, everyone's praying for you for years and they're like, we're going to come, You're thinking no one's going to be there. Yep. And was that part of the reason why you wanted to do it somewhere else was just in kind of secrecy and yeah. Yep. Wow.
So it was beautiful. And then I got a baptismal certificate. The only proof of a the birth certificate I have in my whole upbringing is my baptismal because I don't have my birth certificate from Somalia. And so what was the phrase? Born once, die twice. Born twice, die once. And so I might prove that I was baptized once.
Wow,
so that's awesome,
man.
And that's what my family found. So that was August 26, 2007. So how old would I spiritually be? I think, have I even hit 18 yet? No. This year is going to be year 2015, so 17 years ago, right?
Okay.
Am I doing the math right?
Yeah, it sounds about right.
So next year I get to become an adult because of dang.
That's big stuff, man.
Hold on. Is it this year? Because I'm 36 and I became a Christian when I was 18. So this is going to be the year yeah, this is a year where I've
Yeah.
spent half my life as a Muslim and half my life as a
Wow.
Christian. So next year I will have be more Christian in my life than I've been Muslim,
Wow.
which is kind of a heartbreaking. Oh, that's an eye-opening moment for me. Sorry.
Yeah.
Wow. So that my younger sister found my baptismal certificate. The only thing I've ever hidden from my parents, and so you're in trouble in my family growing up when I have 7 siblings. The house is never empty. So there's 10 of us with my parents. I come home and it's just my parents because my parents have sent my siblings away.
Yeah.
And so they're like, what is this? As they slide the baptismal certificate. And I grew up with my parents. There's like this shame and honor culture like
Yeah.
ingrained in us. If
Yeah.
you tell them something negative before someone else does, there are no consequences. So if you have a bad report card, if you can save them from being like someone else telling
The
them the bad
shame. You
news,
can
the
save
shame
them.
aspect, you didn't know
Yeah.
your child did this. It's like that shame is way more deadly than you just telling them. So I just flat out said I got baptized, and my mom's like, "What is that?" And so I explained it to her. They just like don't know what to do, so they leave to go talk to their spiritual leader, the Imam,
Yeah.
and then from that was October. So baptized in August. October. This is my freshman year of college. October, they find out I'm part of crew, and in college, and I'm having Bible studies in the basement. I told my parents we're just studying a book. We're having a book club, but they didn't know the book was the Bible in their home. So because
funny.
I lived in this weird limbo, but I didn't get punished because they didn't know what to do. And so the Imam told them that it's just a phase. He'll grow out of it. Don't push back. Just say nothing. And so then from October to May, I went to a fall retreat for college. Then I went to the Twin Cities Experience, which is a winter conference. And then I went to a spring break mission trip. And then that led to Summer Project, which is a summer mission trip. So that's when I told my parents I'm going to be gone for the summer to go to San Diego to hopefully work at SeaWorld and then do missions. And that's when the Imam's like, oh, this is serious, because they were seeing the path of things I was doing. I left because my parents, as a good Muslim child, I didn't go anywhere like without my family as like a family trip. So they've noticed a trend. I was gone for a weekend for fall retreat. I was gone for a week to go to be part of an event in the Twin Cities. I was gone for spring break to go. And I never lied to them. I directly just told them what I was doing. I'm part of this campus group. They clearly looked it up and knew what it was. And so, like, as they were seeing, the Imam's like, okay, he's just wandering, but he'll come back. But then when I'm actively proselytizing and sharing Jesus and wanting people to become Christians, that was the hard line, disownment. And so, yeah.
That's so rough. And so you shared a little bit about that being disowned. What is that like today? What's your relationship like with your family today?
With my parents, non-existent, because my dad passed away in 2018 and my mom in 2022.
And tell us about that. When he passed away, was that something you heard through the grapevine, or did you know he was sick?
My older sister has only reached out 3 times since I've been disowned. Once to tell me, Dad has cancer and is passing away. If you want to call now. And then I did. And then I made the mistake because my mom answered and said, what do you want? And I said, I want to pray for Dad. And she's like, well, what do you want to pray about? I just want to pray for him to receive Jesus. And she hung up. And then he passed, which was really, really sad. And that started like a new anger level with my siblings, because I found out when I saw her a year before she passed, she had reached out saying, hey, because my parents were heavy smokers, so they both have been smoking since they were like 14. So they both passed from lung cancer. Man. And so my mom knew she was not doing well. She was on the same step as my dad. And so she wanted to have reconciliation with me, but that reconciliation, and I knew what she meant, but I'll share, is me apologizing to her for the hurt and pain I've caused her for becoming a Christian. And the social shame and the fact that my younger brother had to take care of her, he's not really a responsible individual, and so she blames me for having burdened her with him taking care of her, which is really hard to hear. And so I had to apologize to give her peace, but not have peace between us. And so then she passed a year later, which was really, really, really hard. But before that, during that meeting, my mom did apologize for one thing that I wasn't aware of. And that is, they told my siblings that they didn't tell them they disowned me. They told them I disowned the family and rejected them. Because they didn't want to communicate that. I don't know why. I think more than anything, they were ashamed of, like, they felt like failing. And so so I did not know that. And that explains the animosity and anger from my siblings that I've experienced, and the whole disconnect from them is that my parents had communicated I rejected them, which I didn't.
That's so hard. So did you have a good relationship?
Yeah, I did. And when mom passed, a new level of anger, because I wasn't there for her funeral because no one told me. Which they're upset with me. So how was I supposed to know? I didn't know until my older sister told me a week later after my mom passed. Mom passed, and we buried her. Like,
that's so
thank you for letting me know. And those are the 3 times she's contacted me. Let me know my dad was in passing. You let me know my mom wanted to reach out about meeting, and so I made that drive. Then because I met her the next day after she asked, and then to let me know my mom passed. So it's the only contact I've had with my siblings.
Wow. So what was your relationship with your siblings like before, they said that you disowned them? Did you have a good relationship when you're kind of going back and forth between Islam and Christianity?
Yeah. So my younger brothers definitely idolized me. My youngest brothers, my brother I'm third now instead of fourth, and then I have a sister younger than me, and I have a younger brother, and I feel bad for him. If anyone in my family that I would want to seek to apologize is my parents definitely used the system of, why can't you be like your older brother? I did well in school. I did well in sports. He did not do well in school, didn't do sports. So the way that he got attention was by doing bad things.
Sure.
So he got into trouble. He's been to juvie. He's been to prison, which is really sad. And so I feel bad that I reinforced what my dad was trying to do to get him to be better. And I wish I could take those moments back. But other than that, my other siblings, my 2 older sisters, there's a 5-year age gap between me and my next sister. And so we weren't really close, but my younger sister, who's a year younger than me, she and I were really close.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the biggest relationship I wish I could make better. But because I wasn't there for mom and dad,
it's hard
when they passed, there's an anger there.
Yeah, I'm sure. So let me ask you this, and for those listening, like, there's always rough family dynamics, and so maybe people that are listening to this see themselves in your story. And one thing I think that's incredible is, despite all the stuff that you ever overcame, God had his hand on you and was with you the whole time. And so my question to you, as I'm kind of thinking about this, is, was it worth it? Was the risk worth it? Do you feel like leaving that old life behind of Islam and studying all that, and spending your life, were you essentially on track to becoming an imam, essentially?
Yeah. My 2 other friends that graduated with me are imams.
Okay. So was it worth it? And so was that all that to say, where you're at now, is that something that you still look back and go, I would do this every time again?
Yes, definitely. Harking back to the 3 struggles Muslims have with coming to know Jesus, or wanting to become Christians or accepting Jesus: the divinity, the substitution, and then the cost. There's 3 on the other side of fear of, once I was going to heaven, now I'm going to hell. Every new convert or Muslim background believer struggles with that. 2 is guilt and shame that my actions are now going to be, my family is going to be judged by it. And then lastly, I'm alone. Like, I'm no longer part of a people group, which is not true. And so, and as I've helped Muslims walk into or former Muslims walk into the truth of who Jesus is, it's totally worth it for the lives that have been changed. I think 23 now Muslims have come out of Islam into Christianity. So my life being changed has changed 23 other people's lives, where I feel that that it's kind of like the phrase I've heard back in the day was, I'm a beggar who found food telling other beggars where food is. And in Christianity, the freedom from the bondage of Islam that I now have in Christianity, that I rest in what Christ did, and that there's nothing I can do to earn my salvation but receive this gift that came with a huge sacrifice, is so freeing. And oh man, I want that for more people than just myself. And so the cost is it is hard, but it is definitely worth it.
Wow.
Definitely.
That's amazing. Now, has she talked to your parents or anyone at all?
No,
any of these phone calls or?
My mom made a recording for her when I was there, because I told my mom, I don't think my kids will ever meet you, but I want them to hear you. And so I made that request if I could record a video of her saying hello to Kayla, so that her future and I did that at the beginning of the conversation because I knew the potential for how negative it could go at the end. And it did. She cut the conversation at the end because I asked her a question that I knew was a bit crossing the line, and I asked her why she disowned me, because I would have loved her regardless of my faith with Jesus. And so she did not know how to answer that. So she wanted the conversation to end. So
that's so hard, man.
That was hard. But I do have that recording of my mom.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Man, that is so hard. So what is life like for you today? Or do you have a burden for Somalia? Do you have a burden for your people?
I do. I'm very fortunate that I got invited to a church plant that is former Somali Christians, or former Somali Muslims or Somali Christians are starting, so I'm really excited for that. I have a heart and burden for Muslims to know who Jesus really is. I think Islam lowers him and Muhammad's elevated, and my desire is to flip that. Like, Jesus is the one that comes back to judge everyone. He is the one without sin. He's the one that did beautiful miracles in the Quran that are reflections of the Gospels. And when they hear his words, life changes. I think what is it, John 11? I'm not 100% sure on the exact verse, but where he says, I have other sheep that are not of this fold. When they hear my voice, they will come. And so I believe that they're a lost sheep, that once they hear his words, they'll be changed.
Wow, man, your story's so inspiring, and just your bravery and the risk you took. And like Jesus said, like your family will disown you if you follow me. And that's just exactly what happened to you. And to think that you're still, doing well, you're sharing Jesus with people, and so I just think the Lord's totally going to honor you, and already has. And man, so what an incredible story. Thank you for sharing. Is there anything else? Yeah, man. Is there anything else you'd like to share?
Like I said, my big project is writing my testimony out, so it's finished.
Will that become a book, you think?
Yeah, I think it's been titled Escaping Islam, Somali Christian Story to Faith. Hopefully, I need to raise funding to send it to proper editors, and then working on how to get it out there.
Yeah, man. So, when it's out, definitely come back on the show, and sure. I would love to have you back on. And
that'd be awesome.
Man, that's so cool. I can't wait to get my hands on that. I have this desire, and I've always had this, to go to Somalia. I know it'd be so hard to.
Oh gosh, that is on my short dream list, and it would not be cheap. You'd have to.
How would you even get in?
Bring me along. We'll love to go.
Okay, perfect.
There are ways. They do, but it is costly. There is a safe hotel that you can pay. It's not luxurious hotel by any means, but
Yeah.
but they have like bomb-proof walls. So
Wow.
it is. You would have to hire private security everywhere you went. Like,
So do you know, are there many believers in Somalia today?
Yeah. So well, I don't know if I can say publicly, but I do.
Yeah.
Yes, there are movements. Yeah, there are missionary friends of mine that are there. So.
Wow, it's incredible. Well, Osman, thank you so much for coming on the show, and for those of you listening, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back next Tuesday. Shows release at Tuesday at 5 a.m. You can find the full video on YouTube or Spotify. If you want to do the audio while you're working out or running or something, you can do that on Apple or Spotify or really any major podcast platform. And just wanted to say thank you. Make sure to like this episode, rate, subscribe, whatever you want to do. Anything helps us and helps us keep the show going. So thank you so much, Osman, for coming on. And I look forward to the next one.